HVAC 360, episode number 74. Webduct Systems from AHR Expo 2014. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of HVAC 360. I'm your host, Matt Nelson. Today, we're going to be talking with James Beveridge. Beveridge. Sorry, James. James Beveridge, who is an account manager over at Webduct Systems. Now, Webduct Systems was one of the booths that I frequented at the AHR Expo back in New York City, 2014. Stopped by. And they seemed like, I spent a lot of time over in the, what they refer to as the temperature controls area. And the Webduct system guys really had, a neat system put up. I guess what really struck my interest is, they're really solving a real problem. A problem that I've seen, firsthand. It focuses on quality control. And, it's just one of those things that even though it may not apply to you, it's something that you probably should know about. I mean, knowing how the industry operates is always a good thing. When you're sitting there drawing ductwork, you may not understand the ramifications of what you're drawing. And by understanding what the sheet metal foreman and the sheet metal shop go through, it kind of gives you that perspective that you really need to do, to kick your knowledge up to the next level. So, basically, it was fun talking to these guys. I mean, they're real sheet metal guys. When they're talking about everything by the pound. I mean, when you're talking about, sheet metal, it's this much poundage and that much poundage, and engineers really don't kind of work that way. But the sheet metal guys, it's everything. Everything has a weight to it. So that was kind of an interesting way to go about it. The one thing that gets worked into this conversation, and it was interesting because it was fax machines. A lot of the people, a lot of the foremen, sheet metal foremen, even today, still use fax machines to submit their orders. And, depending on how well they draw or diagram or whatever, it gets lost in translation. But I had this conversation with my teenager the other day, and, I'm like, do you know what a fax machine is? And he shakes his head. He's had no idea. I'm like trying to describe it to him. I'm like, it's kind of like, making a copy of something, like putting something into a copy machine on my end, and then it shoots it over telephone lines, and it comes out on the other end. Except it's not like a copy because it's really crappy on the other end. It was a terrible copy machine when it ends up being. But it's one of those items that are just kind of going by the wayside. There's fewer and fewer places that actually deal with fax machines. And I think that, this solution really is kind of, one of those things that is pushing it, away into the, that realm of antiquity, so to speak, for the fax machine. So, all right, that's my spiel for right now. I hope you learned something from my conversation with James Beveridge, and we'll just wrap this up and cut to the tape. So here we go. All right, today we're talking with James Beveridge, who's an account manager over at Webduct Systems. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing well, Matt. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Good.
Hey, now, a lot of people might not know, but tell me a little bit about Webduct Systems. What's kind of the origin story behind you?
Approximately 6 years ago, a SmackNet contractor wanted to rid a shop of the inefficiencies of fax and called in field tickets and the wasted communication time. He noticed the phone was running off the hook, the fax machine was running steady all day, and he tried a few other products from some other big software vendors and couldn't get the results he was looking for. So he hired a web development company initially to build Webduct, and that's where we began. So we were initially built just to standardize and process field tickets from sheet metal field foremen, get rid of the faxes, get rid of the phone calls, and I think after the first week he rolled it out, he didn't have a single fax anymore, and the phone barely rang. So he was very happy right off the bat, and after that we decided to keep developing the product and move it public and introduce it to other contractors as well.
Wow, that is significant. I mean, really sometimes you try to, find a solution. It may not necessarily work right away, and you end up tweaking it for a period of time. But that seemed to be kind of one of those things that he just hit it, addressed it, and got it done.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely still a lot of tweaking. It's such a custom trade where everything is built from a flat piece of metal, and every shop might manufacture just a little bit differently, different names, different processes. So there's definitely a steep learning curve and a lot of feedback from different people in the shop, different people in the field, what they both want, from project managers down to the admin, and trying to keep everyone happy at different levels of the company as well. So it was a great success right off the bat, but it's an ongoing project and will always be an ongoing project. So we're always developing, adding new features as we get new requests.
So now, I mean, people might, the listeners might kind of say, hey, you know what, why are you talking about, a web-based system it's primarily for contractors? And I guess to answer that myself, it's one of these things where, we tend to kind of really isolate ourselves in what we do. And I'm just trying to bring back more of a integration on, providing a little cross-training information for everybody. Now, I guess saying that, not everyone listening is a contractor. So I guess, explain, go over a little bit more slowly. What was the typical process in the past?
In the past, on a job site, the sheet metal field foreman would take a notepad and mark down all of his dimensions for run of duct. From there, he would then by hand sketch to the best of his ability, and that's one of the big issues, is everyone would draw a three-dimensional product a little differently. So he'd draw the fittings, include the dimensions, the metal gauges, manufacturing specs, and some job info. And as I said, the big issue was this resulted in incomplete data and no standardization, as each field foreman could draw what they wanted. So from there, the foreman would have to find a fax machine and send it to the shop, and that would inevitably result in a series of calls to fill in on missing data and decipher what the foreman wanted on the job. Nowadays, you see a lot of guys, they'll use their smartphone or tablet to take a picture of the sketch and email it in that way, but it still doesn't solve the problem of no standardization and the actual order processing. So they still have to take those fittings, they have to process them and punch them into their CAM, get them costed, get them out to the shop floor, and get them out to the admin, project managers, and in some cases, general contractor as well.
Now, I mean, obviously this is a little bit of a loaded question, but can't you just install ductwork based on engineered drawings?
Ideally, you can, and that's the idea behind a true BIM workflow. The architect, the engineer, the GC, and all the mechanical subtrades are on the same page. They work together on the design, and they all stick to it. Webduct's really designed for commercial work, and the reality is creating perfect, extremely complex structures from 3D models is not going to happen. There are too many variables involved in the building process. Changes happen on the job site, and the cost to actually build the CAD drawing can be enormous overhead as well. So for a sheet metal contractor, why spend all that money meticulously building design, fabricating duct design based off the CAD model, and then get to site and realize that another mechanical subtrade made a change, you're going to have to field measure the duct anyways. And I don't know when this happened, but quite a few years ago, basically on a job site, generally the sheet metal contractor will be the last one to install. So even though they have the biggest mechanical system by size, they're going to go in after the pipe fitters, the plumbers, everyone like that. So if there's been any sort of change, all of a sudden that throws off the run of duct, they're going to have to field measure the duct anyways.
Right, right. And typically, I guess from what I've seen, is that, you have a lot of the ductwork come out. I mean, one of the things they have to do is generate coordination drawings. I think that's a typical, process that they would throw out there. But you'll be able to get like the major ductwork in, but once it comes to, certain types of fittings, connections, changes like you're referring to, that's when you're going to have to go and say, okay, you know what, we'll get most of it up. And then, because that way we can kind of prep the job a little bit and not have to kind of field order every single, piece of, stick of ductwork or run of ductwork. And then we'll get those specialty pieces and those fittings back to the shop to get, put up.
Absolutely. Doing, and this is quite common. You draw in your main lines of duct, I should say, and then you field measure the lines running off that trunk or main line of duct. So you get your big stuff in, and then all the lines running off, you can field measure them, because it's the main line probably won't change, and then everything else you might have a few adjustments here and there. So absolutely, that's a very common workflow.
Now, I guess the technology, in my opinion, I guess has always been a problem anywhere. I mean, there's the learning curve, there's the adoption, there's the, it used to be a pager, it used to be now it's a cell phone, now it's a smartphone, and people are gradually, getting used to it. But it's more of, hey, what is the company going to provide their field people? Is really what it boils down to. And some of them are kind of a little bit resistant. I mean, I'm still today dealing with a guy who has a pager and a fax machine, and that's all he has out in the field. So if I want to get a hold of him, it's a no-go. I mean, that's today in 2014. So it amazes me somehow. But I mean, technology, obviously, how did you? I mean, I guess, how do you approach that when you're talking to owners, saying that, typically, are you talking with owners who are a little bit more technically savvy, or are you dealing with owners that really have to catch up quite a ways? Is this kind of a stretch for them implementing this new system?
There's implementation versus integration will always be a problem, and at this point in time, technology really isn't the issue, and I would argue it probably never is the issue. Most of the contractors I talk to have already rolled out some sort of device to their field crews, whether it's a laptop, a tablet, smartphones as well. They're pretty much ubiquitous in both personal and professional aspects of everyone's life, and I think that most owners realize just simple things like email, time cards, access to drawings, any sort of ordering tool can provide a lot of value, and they need to connect their remote workers back to their shop, back to their admin, project managers, and the best way to do that is to utilize technology. But there absolutely can be resistance to change. I think I read the other day the average age of a field foreman is 51. That means they've probably been in the industry for 20 plus years, and this is a rather new way of doing things. So instead of the hand-sketched orders that are faxed or called in, they're going to have to utilize a tablet or a laptop, or whatever it might be. And some guys are gung-ho and ready to do that. Others, obviously, there's that human aspect where there's that resistance to change, absolutely.
Okay, and I think that most of it, when you're talking about these products, the successful ones, and obviously that's your implementation for your own service, really kind of speaks to, hey, there was success, and they didn't necessarily they really took ownership of this change, and it worked for them. And I think that the one feedback that they get is, if something comes out and it's incorrect, it's a big hassle. Obviously that's one of your benefits to the whole system, is that you don't have that kind of miscommunication. But let's specifically talk now. I mean, we've talked about Webduct. What is Webduct? I mean, is it a product? Is it a service? What exactly is it?
It's a service, so it's a cloud-based service. And the way it works is that each company will have its own deployment. It's branded to them with their shop standards, their costing information in the market. All their foremen are put into the system. Then you have control over what fittings, what products you want them to be able to order, and then you can process those orders. So we set it up to integrate into your CAM system to split the orders up based off your shop layout, time cards as well, everything like that. So we come on site and we actually implement the system and integrate it into your current workflow and get it up and running for you. But it's your own deployment, but it is a service.
So I guess explain that to people who may not know cloud computing, software as a service kind of terminology.
Cloud computing is the direction every major player in the industry is going. That's Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and even software vendors in the MEP industry like Autodesk are going. It's remote data hosting. So instead of having a server internally or downloading traditional installed software that only works on one platform that's installed on one machine, you don't have to install anything. You can access the service or data from any device with an internet connection, and you have a significantly lower cost of ownership. So you're not bogged down with IT costs. You're not managing a server in your office. You can access your data from anywhere. It's kind of the core tenet is that these companies, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, they're going to be able to manage your data much better than you could ever do it, and they're going to be able to do it at a much lower cost. And they're also going to give you the freedom to use any device, any platform to access it, and not be tied down to installing it on a machine and updating it and everything like that.
Right. And I think that's really one of the core benefits of the software as a service kind of aspect and mentality is you don't have to keep it up to date. I mean, anybody who's dealt with any sort of software package in the past, 20 years has kind of understood that, it gets out of date and then you have to spend time and you have to, reinstall it or install the updates or, exactly how you do that. It becomes kind of complicated. People tend to, I guess, resist that change to a new, a new version of the software. And so they end up leaving the old one, which can be problematic. So software as a service kind of eliminates that hassle by, just being able to always have the latest and greatest be available to you. And obviously cloud computing, basically it's browser based, correct?
Exactly. It's web-based, so it's all online. You're not downloading anything. All you need is an internet connection. I was talking to another vendor a few months ago, and at that time, 75% of their customers were still using Windows XP, and this is long after Microsoft stopped supporting it. They just wouldn't upgrade. So you can imagine the headaches they're going through with their new releases, trying to get, and they might not even support Windows XP. So they have to upgrade all their clients' operating systems to even get them to upgrade to use a product. So it's a huge hassle and a huge cost as well. So the benefit of SaaS or software as a service is that it's the lowest cost of ownership. All you need is an internet connection. You need a web browser. That's it. All those other headaches are out the window. You don't have to worry about them.
Right. Now, and I guess security is another thing. When I think of software as a service, my exposure to it has been, if something, comes out and it's like, hey, there's the new virus or this new, loophole that people, hackers are exploiting, software as a service patches that up right away. And you have somebody doing it for you rather than having, okay, now I have to drop everything and go address this pressing issue. I mean, obviously there's the the update install, and then there's these critical updates that come along. But the software as a service model handles that.
Yes, exactly. Some people are a little leery of having their data stored by a third party, like Amazon Web Services, for example. But the reality is, I mean, Amazon doesn't go down. It might happen once every few years for a couple minutes, and that's it. I mean, if you had your own installed software on your device, on your laptop, on your desktop, whatever it might be, you're probably going to be every month, every few weeks, downloading new updates, supporting it, as you said, new security software, antivirus, everything like that. And there's only a certain life of a computer. Realistically, you're going to get a few years out of a laptop or a desktop, and then you're going to have to get a new one. Being cloud-based, it doesn't really matter. You don't have to worry about all that data that's locked into that computer because it's all in the cloud. You can access it from any device. So there is definitely some benefits from the security side as well.
Now, I guess rolling it out, you talked about kind of holding the hands of anybody who's deploying the service. The field agents that actually get the whether it be a smartphone, whether it be a tablet, obviously even could be just a standard computer, anything with a web browser, basically can access this. It's so I guess kind of explain what does it look like.
Generally, what we do when we come on site, and we'll be on site for 3 days, is we configure everything. So we sit down with someone who has understanding of the shop standards, manufacturing standards, and that's equipment and how they fabricate. And what we'll do is we'll put that data into their deployment, and then we build their catalog. So what fittings they want available. So what they like to manufacture, what's cost effective for them, what their field foremen are going to need on a job site, and then any other stock products, so accessories, tools, hardware that they need. And then from there, what we'll do is we'll train the field foreman. So generally what happens is we'll train either a few champions. So, for example, 5 field foremen get Webduct loaded onto their tablet or laptop. So we'll just bookmark a browser or save a browser on the desktop. And then from there, they can we'll set their passwords, their login information. So it's really straightforward. All they need is their email address and a password, and they're good to go. That's all they have to remember. So there's nothing really to download. We'll set a link, and then they log in on a job site, and they can begin submitting orders right away.
So now when you look at the interface, they've logged in. Is it going to be kind of like a more or less a shopping cart, kind of like, hey, I want one of these, one of that? How does that work?
Well, the fittings, it's all 3D CAD accurate, so there's some geometry behind it, and basically what will happen is they'll log in, they'll enter some information. All the shop standards are preset, so that's the gauge, the connectors, material, the spec. So they can override that information, but it's all preset to how the shop likes to manufacture. So for them, they just have to enter the dimensions, for example, on a piece of straight duct, the width and the depth, and then the length will autofill based off the connectors they use, based off either SMACNA standards or their own company shop standards. So it's really straightforward, but for the tools, accessories, and hardware, it's just like shopping on Amazon. It's what the guys are used to. So they just pick a product, they enter how many they want, any variables on the product, so different sizes, things like that, and then they hit submit. It goes on their job order, and then they have a cost and a poundage right away.
So now, I guess, is there can you order things besides ductwork?
Yes, absolutely. Webduct's designed for ductwork, but you can put anything a foreman might need on a job site on Webduct, and that's what all of our customers do. So tools, accessories, hardware, safety supplies, and especially depending on the stage of the job, a lot of foremen might need to start off with a big order of tools and accessories to get a job site up and running. So anything your guys would need on the site, you can put on Webduct. So it's kind of a universal ordering tool outside of just the ductwork. And that way, if you're the purchasing agent or the shop or the admin, or whoever might handle tools, if you run a tool crib, you're not getting a paper order or a faxed in order while the shop's getting a standardized digital order. It's all going to be the same order. So it really changes how you process everything coming in from the field.
Now, is there any sort of safeties that, say, for instance, somebody accidentally, ordered, 100 ladders as opposed to 10 6-foot ladders?
Yeah, there was that's part of that learning curve. So a couple of years ago, we built in some fail-safes. If you go over 9 items, it'll automatically pop up and ask you sure you want these 11 items, for example, just in case a guy double taps or anything like that. So we want to limit the mistakes as much as possible, and we have built in a lot of fail-safes to do that. So in terms of the standardization, on that end, duct manufacturing is extremely customized. So with a traditional ordering method, as mentioned earlier, a foreman has no parameters on what he can order. With the deployment of Webduct, you have control over everything your remote workers have access to and how they order the fittings. So you can lock down the maximum dimensions, the connectors they can use. So all the duct is connected by different connectors or joints, as we call them. So that could be slip and drive, TDF, TVC, duct mate. So you can control what connectors your foreman have, the gauge, so the metal gauge, the spec, so +2 water gauge, +4 water gauge, and really lock it down. So and especially on a job per job basis, if you needed to, if there's certain specs on a job, then you can control how the guys order and ensure that they're ordering those specs for that job. So it does a lot in terms of standardization and in terms of a complete ordering tool.
Now, a lot of times you and this I kind of learned on the floor of the expo, but it's not just a internal tool for a shop. It can also be, say, for instance, in a local area, you have a couple different. If you're a sheet metal shop and you have a couple people that say you run a specialty, if you have a specialty line that you run, like a round duct, and they can order from you. You can give them access, and it can actually operate like an e-commerce site where they order. Is that correct? Am I getting that right?
That is correct. We built out an e-commerce module, and running a sheet metal shop is a huge overhead. The equipment's extremely expensive. Union labor, obviously, is extremely expensive. So a lot of companies are just install only. They don't have a shop, so they'll just install the ductwork and they'll buy it from a third-party manufacturer. So there's quite a big industry of just manufacturers who just make the ductwork and they sell it to the install guys. So we built the e-commerce solution for the sheet metal manufacturers to sell duct install-only contractors. It allows the install-only contractors to get a quote and order 24/7. So just like anything web-based or online, they can do it at their convenience. So if they have 8 hours in a day to hang duct and build to a client, they can get on the job site. They can work for 8 hours, and if they need to order that night, they can just sit down at home at their desktop and they can punch in an order. And they'll instantly get a quote, so they'll instantly know their cost. So if it wasn't a job site and they needed to get a change order to an engineer on site or the general contractor, they can punch in their order right there on site with Webduct on their iPad or on their tablet. They can get the quote, get approved, and then send it into the manufacturer.
Now this is.
Sorry, go ahead, Matt.
Oh. So this is, in essence, you have a great estimating tool. I know that obviously, different companies have estimators on staff, and they're specifically focused on, getting the next job, getting that number correct. So this is in essence helping the project manager not utilize that resource, so to speak, improperly.
Yeah. We want to limit the amount of hands that touch every order and the overhead to process every order. And if we can get every order in costed on a per fitting basis, so instead of just doing a run of duct, it breaks it down per fitting based on all your costs to manufacture the duct and the material as well. It's a huge advantage because you're not tying up an estimator. It's going to provide a quicker turnaround. It's going to allow that estimator as well to go out and win new work instead of having to price change orders coming into the shop or field measured runs of duct, things like that. So there's a big advantage for that. And on the e-commerce side as well, I think generally most duct manufacturers who sell to install-only contractors, they might get 1 to 3 out of every 10 jobs they bid. So for every 10 quotes they do for guys walking into their shop, they might only get 1 to 3 of those. So if their customers can quote themselves and get a price themselves without tying up their estimating department, that's a huge return and a very significant value proposition, in my opinion. So instead of stacking that overhead of the estimator on that one job they get out of 10 jobs, they can empower their customers to quote themselves anytime, 24/7. So it's a huge advantage if you can get your customers on there. It's going to drastically reduce your costs.
Basically, you have no hassle pricing.
Exactly. So standardized pricing, and you can get your customers in there. They can do it themselves instead of tying you down. And for example, I was talking to a contractor in Southern California. He uses the Webduct e-commerce module, and he deals with a lot of HVAC technicians, guys who do refrigeration work as well. But they might need to order some duct from time to time. And these guys, they're not union guys. They're not used to ordering duct work, things like that, up to SMACNA standards. So there's always a huge hassle for their customers. They have to go into the shop and sit down with someone, explain what they want, and then get feedback, and then put the order in from there. So a huge amount of overhead for everyone to process these orders. So now with their deployment of Webduct, these guys can log in from their job site instead of driving to the shop. They can punch the order in. It's going to come into SMACNA, their shop standards. It's already costed. They're not going to have to pick up the phone, anything like that. So it's the same standardization for that and benefits for that e-commerce customer, our customer. So it downloads directly into your CAM system, the order tracking, the order splitting, everything like that. But for their customer, there's also a huge value proposition and a significant benefit as well, because it also saves them time, cuts down their costs, and allows them to work independently and not have to rely on this contractor and waste their time on the phone and wait for the turnaround to get a quote and everything like that.
Now, you've mentioned a couple of times that order splitting or splitting groups. Can you explain that a little bit?
What we did is, since we carry more than just ductwork and you can put your tools, accessories, and everything on there, is we built what we call order fulfillment groups. So you can put any products in different fulfillment groups. So you can have your ductwork group or your shop group, and all the fittings will go there. And then you can have your stock product group, so things you might buy out, like a spiral elbow, and you can put all your stock products in a stock fulfillment group. And same thing for your tools and your hardware, so your warehouse items. And so when an order is submitted, so if a guy in the field, it's the exact same ordering process, he picks what he needs. Let's say he has a few fittings and some tools and some warehouse items. When he submits that order, it's going to split up between those order fulfillment groups. So each fulfillment group will have an admin who's responsible for those products. So the tool who's in charge of the tool crib will receive the tools automatically. So when that order is submitted, everyone's going to get a notification that an order's been submitted, and then they're going to have their own work order of the products they need to get ready for that job or that work order. And they can update their own order status. So when they get the order, they can put it in production, and they can say, okay, it's ready for ship and pickup. And then when the order's picked up or delivered on the job site, they can toggle it to delivered. So it's okay, Matt?
No, I don't mean to interrupt you, but so I mean, as far as the delivery goes, then how does that look to somebody in the field? I mean, what are they looking at when they log into Webduct? They've processed an order, hit submit, and what are they looking at now?
As soon as the field foreman submits an order, or whether it's a e-commerce customer from a manufacturer, they're going to get a notification right away letting them know that job number 20742 has been submitted. It's on this job. This is when you need it by, and a link back to their field PDF. So the field PDF will give them everything they ordered, broken down into different groups, all the dimensions, what job it's on, everything like that. So it's a clean cut sheet. And for them, when they go back to their work order archive, they can see the fulfillment groups. So they can see the stock items, the shop items, tools, warehouse, for example, and they can see the order status in each group. So it doesn't change anything on the field side, except for that they can track their order. And when all sections of the order, all fulfillment groups are toggled to ready for shipping pickup, the field foreman or the e-commerce customer will automatically get a notification letting them know that job order 20742 is ready for pickup or shipping, expected on the job site or swing by the shop. So it standardizes that communication as well, lets them know when their order is ready. They can see where it is in the manufacturing process at all times. So it really helps with the communication between the shop and the field, or from the shop to an e-commerce customer as well.
So, I mean, basically back, before they would implement the solution, they'd have to kind of, either wait for shipments, or they'd have to call back to the people, call back to their shop and say, hey, is this order ready? that's the kind of that's what they have to go through.
Yeah, I mean, generally, for a lot of field foremen, and this is another thing on Webduct, is you can set the days they can pick their order to be ready. So if you're backed up in the shop and you use 3 to 5 days to turn around an order, you can set it so they can order run a duct for the next day. It has to be 3 to 5 days out. So with that, and with the fulfillment groups and the order statuses, now when the order is submitted, the guy in the field will know, okay, this is going to be a slower turnaround. And if he did need, for example, a rush job, and a lot of the field guys, and every job's a rush job, but they can put a note in with the order as well, just saying, can you give me a call? I really need this. I really need this tomorrow. The job site's shutting down. This is my one chance to get it in, or whatever it might be. And then the shop can see that and give them a call if they do really need it earlier, and they have to kind of rush the job. So traditionally, what would happen is the shop foreman or whoever it might be might receive a fax or an email, and it'll have a kind of a different fittings with scribbles and things like that, and maybe some tools on it, or maybe that'll come in as a different fax later on in the day, and then they'd have to split the orders up basically. So they'd have to run the duct out to the shop floor and give it to the cam operator or someone like that to figure out what exactly they want, and then they have to take the tool part and they have to go to the tool crib. But with Webduct, that's all automated. So based off your manufacturing layout, you can control where every fitting, tool, accessory, and hardware on the deployment will go in your shop automatically.
Excellent. So I guess what are some of the things that you get, some feedback you get from the users?
Generally, the feedback on the metal side, I mean, on the front end of Webduct, we built it to be as easy to use as possible. So we built it with the field, the shop in mind. So generally, the feedback is we're very easy to use, have a low cost of ownership, and I mean, when properly implemented, we definitely deliver a measurable return. So a lot of companies, the feedback is at first there's going to be some implementation issues. I mean, it's such a custom industry. It's going to take a few days for us on site to get everyone trained, get it implemented in the shop, in the field, everything like that. And there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve depending on the foreman to order remotely through a cloud-based service like Webduct. But once they're into it, they're never going to go back. So once they get used to it, the feedback's great. I mean, I talked to a foreman not too long ago. He's been in the industry 29 years, and when we were on site, he was not interested at all. And within 2 months, he was submitting 45 to 60 orders a month on Webduct, and he said he can never go back. It's just once you get used to it and you make that change and you accept the change, it makes a huge difference. And I mean, the feedback's absolutely excellent. And once the guys get used to it, it can make a real difference in your operations and really does deliver a significant return.
Now, anything that that you've learned from your customers that they didn't expect when they implemented it?
That's a good question. I mean, we learn something new from pretty much every customer because they each do something a little bit differently. A lot of new feature requests, new features that they would like that can be very customized or pertain just to them. One company that I found this interesting is they had a lot of guys walk into their office and then request an order of duct or something like that. So these guys would walk in and they'd have some scribbles down, and they'd go to the secretary or the admin, and they would go to the shop foreman, something like that. So what they did was they set their admin up with a seat on Webduct. So when these guys walked in, she'd just say, "Here, punch your order in, or I'll punch it in myself." And it really is that easy to use. So even though they had no ductwork training or sheet metal training, they were able to figure it out and punch their orders in themselves. So it's So in that case, that was something new. I had never heard that, but they had their secretary on Webduct costing jobs for their walk-in customers.
I can see that kind of negatively impacting the guys in the field, saying, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to take a break. I'm going to walk to the shop and submit this order, and I'm going to talk to Joe for half an hour and get a cup of coffee or whatever." So,
Yeah, exactly. We got to talk about the hockey game or the basketball game and catch up, and that's the whole thing. I mean, it's great. I mean, if when someone calls you, though, you're going to talk about the weather, what's going on, and if you can eliminate that, I mean, it is a huge benefit.
right, exactly. Now, I guess obviously the question is Webduct a fit for everyone?
Um, if you're a sheet metal fabricator and installer, then yes, absolutely. Outside of that, on the mechanical side, not necessarily. So we built Webduct for ductwork, and you can put any products you want onto Webduct. And generally, in my experience, if you fabricate ductwork and you install ductwork and you're a commercial sheet metal contractor, then absolutely Webduct's for you.
So even the smallest shops see a benefit.
Yes, absolutely, and they often have the biggest benefit to gain. Maybe they're a little behind on utilizing technology, and maybe they don't have the upstairs software, so maybe they don't have an estimating system, maybe they don't have other software programs, or they don't have a CAD program. So Webduct has a lot to offer them, and being SaaS, or software as a service, it's a different pricing model as well than traditional software. So it's not a big upfront fee. So it's month to month, so they can control their costs. It's flexible. So it really has a lot to offer smaller contractors, in particular, in my opinion.
So, I mean, I guess the bottom line, what is, the typical installation? What is the typical cost of the system?
Well, in our experience, what we do is we try to make getting started with Webduct a low risk, low cost, and flexible. So what we do is we charge a flat rate to cover a 3-day site visit. So what we'll do is come on site, as I mentioned earlier, and configure everything, customize it, train everyone, and implement it. And then from there, we provide 60 days of unlimited use to roll Webduct out to your field crews. So that gives you 60 days to get everyone in your company in Webduct for no cost, get them up and running, get the feedback. Maybe a field foreman will notice that he might need a particular type of screw and that wasn't on the deployment, and then you add it, for example, or the parameters on the fittings need to be increased from 200 to 400 based off what the guys need. So we'll give you that 60 days to get it out there and implement it for no cost. And then after that, you can either move to month-to-month billing. So if you fluctuate in your workers quite a bit, which is common in the industry, so you're really busy, you have 15 to 20 foremen, and then you hit a slow period, you're going down to 8 to 12, you can ramp up and ramp down every month. Or you can just commit to an annual contract for a base number of seats, because it's all done on a per-seat basis, and then you can add foremen as need be.
I mean, that sounds great. I mean, just, as far as being flexible like that, that's, it really is what, contractors need. They just need something that they can use, and that they're not going to, end up paying for something they're not using. So that's always great.
Yeah, exactly. So we're not going to charge you up front, and especially in this industry, I've found that a lot of companies have multiple duplications of the same software, so from different vendors, and some of it might be outdated, but it's just bought over the years, and a lot of it just sits on the shelf and it's never implemented. So we want to implement it with you and for you, get it up and running, and then from there, we're not going to charge you a huge fee up front. You have complete control over what your bill is going to be every month. You can ramp up, ramp down. So it's really, we want to make it as easy as possible, and really let them customize it to their business.
All right. So I guess what, we've talked a lot about the product. Is there anything that we haven't covered, James?
I think it's probably about it on my end. I mean, do you have any other questions?
Well, I guess maybe, obviously we've kind of gone through and we've described this product. which, all things considered, it's a kind of a visual product. How would, what's the best way for somebody if they're, if they are a sheet metal contractor or they know a sheet metal contractor, what's the best way for them to kind of learn a little bit more about what it looks like and possibly get a demo of it?
The best way to evaluate Webduct is either through an online demo or a site visit where we can walk you through deployment and you can look at every aspect of it. And it's a lot of people look at it as just a field ordering tool, but it does so much more than just sheet metal. It does everything your field guys would need. It ties into your fabrication software. It costs everything. There's labor time. So it's really a simple program on the front end to operate, but there's a lot of stuff going on in the back end. So everyone's always blown away when they sit down and go through a demo and they realize how many different areas of the company that Webduct touches. So from the admin to the project managers, estimating department, shop, the field, to the ownership. So it's really the best way to evaluate Webduct is through a product demo, whether that's online or site visit.
All right, great. Well, I appreciate you being on the show, James. And once again, it was one of those things I wasn't necessarily looking for at the AHR Expo, but when I started talking to the guys at the booth there and yourself, it was something that it fascinated me, just from the way that, I like to think of I have kind of an intuitive sense of whether something's, kind of a meaty product that has a lot to it, or it's a little bit of a fluff. But I really like the way that your product went together, and it made a lot of sense to me, especially from what I remember at my stint at the sheet metal shop there.
I appreciate that, Matt, and thanks for having me on. And I think everyone's looking for mobile solutions at this point, whether it's time cards, Autodesk BIM 360 Glue, different drawing and amendment programs like PlanGrid. There's a lot out there, and there's a lot of value in introducing mobile technology to your field crews and tying them back into the shop and the field together. It definitely delivers a lot of value, and I think as industry progresses, you're going to see more and more programs come out and more tools be made available.
All right. Well, thanks again for being on the show.
All right. Thanks, Matt.
All right, and we're back. Thanks again to our guest, James Beveridge from Webduct Systems. Appreciate him taking his time out of his schedule to be able to talk with us about his solution, his service that they provide. Thanks to you for listening. I really appreciate it. It really warmed my heart to see the statistics every month, to know that you appreciate and you understand that you are listening to this. I guess a couple of different things that you can do. Sign up for my newsletter. If you've never been to the website buildingx.co, go to the website, sign up for the newsletter. I'm trying to get out things like the reading list, different notices. I'm trying to build that up a little bit. I haven't been, as proactive in the past, but I'm trying to get that out and make it something that's really useful to you on a regular basis. So please, I guess the best thing that you can do is to go sign up for my newsletter. I'd really appreciate it. If you like the episode, pass it along. If you know a contractor, sheet metal contractor, that would be interested in this, obviously, it's something that is going to save him money. And I know that he'd appreciate it. So if you want to have some bonus points with different contractors, maybe pass along the episode. Give them the hint. Otherwise, if you would, other things you can do, give me some comments on iTunes. I'd appreciate that greatly. Otherwise, email if you have any suggestions. If you like the episode, if you didn't like the episode, if you want to hear something different, please email me at matt@buildingx.co. Also, I'm on Twitter every now and then, and you can follow me on LinkedIn. So that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed the episode. And as always, remember, know what you build and share what you know.